All right, I feel good. I feel good. It's time to get things kicked off. It's time to start rolling. So, welcome to Press Start, which is our initiative to show off the amazing talent here at Iron Galaxy. But it's the talent that are a part of our employee resource groups, our ERGs, from our diverse community of game devs here we have at Iron Galaxy. This is our Hispanic Heritage Month edition. So, you're going to meet some amazing members of our team today. We'll have a panel, and here's kind of the agenda. Just to highlight off the top, if you are interested in submitting questions, we do have a Zoom Q&A as well that you can submit questions to. If you throw them in chat, Rick, who is kind of leading some of the tech here, will probably scrape and find those too. We're going to do some team introductions. You'll meet Iron Galaxy and learn what the company is about. We'll have a developer panel where we will ask some questions to our team members. Then I'll give you some advice to get hired. And then, of course, we'll have that Q&A time for you, your questions, and the things that are important to you. So let's get things kicked off. And if you would not mind, Erica, tell everyone a little bit about you.
I'm Erica Fernandez. I am on the design team. I'm a lead UI designer. I also do UX. I do technical application. I've got a lot of hats. And as you can see here, my favorite food is strawberries. Despite all of the Kirby's surrounding me, my favorite game series is Zelda, but I can mimic Kirby from Nintendo, and I usually have asked to do it on command quite often. But yeah, so that's me. I've been at Iron Galaxy for a little over 6 years now.
I love that. Thank you for sharing, Erica. But I'm not going to go to the next slide without hearing you do your imitation of Kirby, right? There's no chance.
Hi.
That's 10 out of 10. I think that's pretty great. Let's meet our next team member, Everardo. If you wouldn't mind telling everybody a little bit about you.
Oh, heads up,
Everardo,
muted.
you're muted.
Thanks for that. Everardo Acosta here. Been working with Iron Galaxy for 12 years now. My role varies, but right now I'm just gonna go with environment lead, current environment lead at Iron Galaxy. Favorite foods are empanadas, all kinds of empanadas. As you guys know, there's, each region of the Hispanic community has their own little variation. Favorite games currently are Guacamelee and Little Nightmares. Love the gameplay and the visuals of both of these games. Two drastically different looking and playing games. Fun fact would be that I like to dance, and no, Eli, I'm not gonna dance on screen, okay?
Well, can you tell me then, is there an empanada that's currently in the driver's seat for you? Because there's so many empanadas, right? Is there one that like really appeals to you?
I think my wife is Ecuadorian, her family is, and I love Ecuadorian empanadas with just all the different types of, they have sugar in there. They have, variations of like chicken or cheese or whatnot. It's just this, they threw basically everything in there, which I love.
I love me a pastor empanada because that pineapple inside of that dough with the chicken or with the pork, it's just so good. Makes me very happy.
Cool.
Our next team member here is Gabe. Gabe, what do you got for us?
Oh, hey, everybody. My name is Gabe Gonzalez. I've been at Iron Galaxy for 3 years now as a producer, and I've been in the industry for 10 years. And I started out as a designer before I transitioned into project management and being a producer. My favorite games look all very different, but they kind of all involve management or simulation, which funny that I chose production as my final calling. But those are 3 amazing games. Ropa Vieja, I'm talking about my mom's Ropa Vieja, of course, which is amazing and something I grew up and had a lot of growing up. Latin Square is a place nearby that has some really good Ropa Vieja as well. And guava and cheese, if I had to pick one empanada right now, is what I would grab right now.
Oh, that sounds so refreshing. I wanted to mention, so being a ranger in a national park, did you there's that image going around, the viral image of that dude like drop kicking that crocodile. So did you ever have to do anything like that in these national parks? What were you doing as a ranger?
Every day was different. We definitely discouraged any drop kicking of crocodiles or alligators in our park. And yeah, some days we would have a eagle in the tree, a bald eagle, and my job would be like, sit at that tree, and someone's going to tell them, hey, look for Ranger Gabe. He's got the straw hat, and he's going to tell you where a bald eagle is. And I'm just at the base of the tree waiting for people to come down the trail, and I'm like looking up bald eagle facts on my phone. Like, I gotta be an expert in the field, like in 10 minutes. Like, someone's coming. It's
That's
just every day was
amazing.
different.
I love that you were wearing the straw hat. You were part of the Straw Hat Pirates officially. Love to see it. Got to bring the anime in too. All right. So our next introduction, Keenan, please tell everyone a little bit about you, your years of experience, and what you do at Iron Galaxy.
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name's Keenan Moralicz. If you look at my last name, you're like, wait, that name kind of looks like a Hispanic or Latin name, but it looks a little different. So previous, my last name was Moralicz. But when my wife and I got married, we decided to combine last names. So my last name is Morales. Her last name is Pazowitz, and we kind of like took the front and back half and mixed them together. So new unique spelling, I guess. I am the community and social media manager here. Previously, assisting the community of Rumbleverse, and as of recently, leading Iron Galaxy social media. Been here a little over 2 years now, and it's been a great 2 years. Favorite food, spinach and sausage pan pizza. This comes from my love of Chicago pizza. There's definitely like this favoritism towards deep dish here, but I have the favoritism towards pan pizza. Specifically Pequods or Burt's, if you're ever around to try it. Favorite games, obviously Rumbleverse, Persona 5, League of Legends. I've been playing way too much ranked recently. It's probably it is an unhealthy amount of League, but that's just because I love the game so much. And Smash Bros Ultimate. And fun fact, I've backup danced for Sierra.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I don't know if you have the contact information for Russell Wilson, but I would like to tell him to please leave Colorado, my home state. So that's what I've got for you today. That's a deep cut football and musical joke because they are married, for everyone who knows. Thank you, Keenan. I would love to have our DEIA lead also give an introduction. Rejess, please tell everyone about you.
Hey, thanks. My name is Rejess Marshall, and I manage all of our diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility programs here at Iron Galaxy. My favorite food is Jamaican food. It's a toss-up between Jamaican and Mexican, honestly, every day. Rice-based cultures, spicy foods. Mexican is winning out right now because I went to Houston, and I had, it was a breakfast nacho. Chicales, I think, and it was the best thing I've ever had. My favorite games are Monopoly and NBA 2K. I am one of those people who plays one game and it's 2K. That's it. And my fun fact is that I'm a DJ and my pronouns are she, her.
Perfect. I will round out the crew. I'm Eli. I'm a recruiting manager here at Iron Galaxy, and I've been with the company for closing in now on 3 years, which is pretty awesome. My favorite game of all time is Super Mario RPG. So happy that remake is coming out soon. I feel like I won. I don't need any more games. It's great. Fun fact is I worked on an indie game called Rain in Your Parade, where you play as a jerk cloud and ruin things. But my other fun fact is I'm a huge Celtics fan, and my mom got me this bootleg poncho in Mexico, and it is one of my most prized possessions in life. And I wear it around, and when I go to games, I wave it annoyingly in front of people as free throws are happening. So one of my most prized possessions tied to my culture, and my pronouns are he, him. And now that you've met all of us, I'm going to tell you a little bit about Iron Galaxy Studios. So we're one of the world's largest independent video game developers. We have 270 plus team members. We've shipped 80 plus titles. We've worked with 20 plus AAA partners over 15 years of great game making. And we're in a few different places that you might want to work with us. We're in Chicago, we're in Nashville, we're in Orlando, and we are coming soon to Austin, Texas as well with the physical location. So this is where we make games. But these are some of the things that I think make people choose us as a company. For those 15 years of great game making that I just mentioned, we've had 0 layoffs. We have a ton of stability here at the studio. 32 of our team members have been here for 10 plus years. That's a rarity. We have a very low turnover rate. Some of the biggest game companies on the planet trust Iron Galaxy to help ship their titles. If you've seen our new, amazing, awesome website, you will have seen just the huge depth And those 80 plus games, a lot of them are some of my favorite franchises. And I'm sure some of your favorite franchises too. Speaking to that variety, we worked on 10 different games in 2022 across 12 different platforms. Once we get to the end of 2023, maybe I'll be able to share more details about that. But a lot of our stuff is under wraps and under NDA until it's released. But you name it, we've shipped it. First-person shooters, role-playing games, MMOs, and more. We have worked on pretty much every type of franchise and every platform out there. We work in Unreal, Unity, and many custom game engines. In all of that massive work, somehow still we have a great work-life balance with all the amazing things we're doing out there. It's an emphasis here. Everyone knows it. It's not just our company culture. It's how we treat each other. You're supposed to work that best 8 hours a day to equal your 40-hour work week. I would never say that we're perfect and that someone hasn't done more than that. There's not times that it's busier here, but I will tell you, we all know that expectation that you're supposed to regularly have that 40-hour work week, and it's a huge emphasis here. Alongside that, people care. It's not just the work-life balance, it's also generous PTO, vacation time, sick days, mental health days, flexible start times. We have a hybrid workplace where you can have those pajama days at home and you can also have those days at office when you're losing to me at Smash Brothers. Those are all things that are possible for you. And of course, we have inclusive benefits as well. But if that's not enough to convince you, we've won some great accolades as well. In fact, this Great Place to Work award, last year we had a 95%. This year we got a 97%. And this is something where a certain percentage of your staff has to submit results. It's an anonymous survey, and 97% of the 270 plus people that work here say it's a great place to work. So it's not just me telling you how awesome it is, it's also the employees having their voices heard and saying that this is a great place to work too. But we've received those type of awards from many different places, but the Great Place to Work certification is great. I got the sticker, it's on my car, you know what I mean? I live it, I believe it. But of course, that's just the environment. Let me talk to you about some of the amazing games. Iron Galaxy is known for ports, remasters, co-development, support work, and of course, full game development. I'll give you some brief highlights of those projects. So we've done ports for Spyro, Uncharted, Crash, Skyrim, Street Fighter, Borderlands. Those are some big franchises. I'm sure you've all played some of those. We've also done support work for things like Destiny, BioShock, Fallout, Overwatch, Metroid Prime Remaster. Support work on that is so awesome. I just love Metroid so much. And of course, we've worked on Diablo as well. And then the co-development, a lot of this is under wraps. I can't talk about most of it, but here's some of the platforms that we've worked on. But I will say recently, if you look in the credits of Starfield, we are in those credits. So we've worked with some of the biggest companies on the planet, and we've been a part of some of the biggest games. And I do think that everyone here loves the variety, and we get to see a little bit and be a little bit of a part of all of the industry, which I really appreciate and enjoy. But of course, we are well known for, of course, Dive Kick. A lot of our fans talk to us about it. Killer Instinct is something that people always talk to us about when they see us wearing Iron Galaxy shirts. And of course, recently with Rumbleverse, one of our favorite things, right? Everyone loves the game. We love it too. And now I'd like to turn things over to our panelists. I just want to give you kind of that little base of all of our games and kind of the things that we've done. So you have, kind of that foundation about us and the kind of things that our team members do. But to kind of kick it over to the group here, I kind of just wanted to start with talking about our paths into games. So Keenan, if you wouldn't mind, can you share with me kind of some of your first steps into the industry and how you got here?
Sure. So I was working at a sales job in my early to mid 20s, and I had recognized that while I learned a bunch of things, took away a lot of valuable skills, I wanted to do something else, kind of had a mid-20s crisis, you could say. I had to look around me. I was like, what do I love? And I'm like, I play video games every day. So maybe working in video games is a potential option. I wish I figured this out earlier, so I studied in school. But I basically had a conversation with my wife, girlfriend at the time. It's like, hey, I want to figure this out. Could you support me? I also talked to my family, and then they're like, all right, you're invited to try and figure this out. Go for it. What I did from then is watch a bunch of YouTube videos, read a bunch of stuff online, looked at where I could potentially qualify, and what I landed on was community. And what I did from there is built up my resume with what I knew was feasible and around me. So there's this place called Ignite Gaming Lounge. I'm actually sitting in the chair right now. Shout out to my old employer. in GameStop, and I did an internship for an esports association. And basically, I just try to buff up my resume and interact with communities that I could apply and work for, because obviously I didn't have that traditional game dev education or history or knowledge. But I tried to figure it out. I had a support system around me, and I figured it out from there.
I love that you kind of had that intention. You had to bet on yourself, but then you also asked the people in your life to support you with it too. I really appreciate that kind of that go-getterness, that go-get-itness of you and chasing that dream. Rejess, how did you end up at IG? What was that journey for you?
Yeah, well, I was less intentional about getting in games than Keenan was. I actually just wanted to do diversity and inclusion work. So I guess I had my 20s crisis as well, and realized what I was doing at the time just wasn't as impactful for people as I had hoped it would be. And so I wanted to do a career change into a field that I felt like I impacted people's day-to-day lives. And I settled on I wanted to do diversity and inclusion in corporate spaces. And in applying for jobs, this is where I landed, and I'm pretty happy that I landed in this space.
I love it. Thank you for sharing, Rejess. Everardo, I'd love to hear what your journey's been like. I think maybe you're probably the most tenured person at IG here in the room. So I'm sure it was a long, winding trail, but please share the story.
Try to condense it into half an hour. Okay.
Okay, cool. The next half hour is yours.
Yeah, so I've been in games for a little bit over 20 years. To your point, yes. And actually, to piggy off of Rejess's comment, like me coming into games was unintentional. I'm an artist by background, traditional artist, and I just so happened to pick up computers back then, computers and 3D modeling on the side with the hopes of working in movies. I got hired at Midway Games through a friend who worked there. The whole thing's like, hey, it's 3D, you'll be working in, with the environments, and eventually you could move out west and work on movies or whatnot. So again, video games was just going to be a stepping stone. So I got hired through a friend. Midway Games, the guy who hired me didn't like my portfolio, but again, because I knew someone in the industry and they knew sort of kind of like my work ethic or whatnot, they sort of kind of like, hey, let's give this guy a shot. So knock on wood, pure luck. I sort of learned on the job and sort of excelled just because I had an artistic background, and it allowed me to sort of marry the technical and the artistic side of me, and realizing that, hey, I'm actually have a knack for this, and 20 years later, I'm still working on environments. So
how do you like it? How do you like working on environments, making these beautiful lush areas? Or
well, I still love it. I still do. I've gone to doing like art direction and doing sort of more hands-on stuff, but I always keep gravitating to working on environments. I just love sort of kind of like the variety it provides with like putting ambient motion in the environment, or building out a forest or a cityscape, or it's endless, the possibilities you could do with environments.
I truly agree. There's sometimes where I'm playing games, and when you're like running through a level, then it just makes you stop, and you're like, wow, like that's the moments that I think maybe environment artists chase. But like ultimately, like just the things that you're doing and your your talented teams. Thank you so much, because yes, I've had some of those wow moments myself. But Erica, I'd love to hear your steps into the industry as well, because I know you've seen a lot of growth here at Iron Galaxy. So please share.
Yeah, I'll share my growth at Iron Galaxy for a future question. But my ventures into gaming, I have been a huge gamer since I was very little. So I figured out very early on that I wanted to get into the gaming industry. I remember being in middle school and taking Photoshop and animation classes and just any sort of computer classes. I liked doing layouts, and I learned web design. I think I even taught myself HTML when I was in elementary school, because I wanted to make Neopets layouts. That's from the past for those of us who are older. And so when I got into high school, I continued to take more computer classes. And by the time I graduated, I was like, I'm going to go to school for gaming. Unfortunately, I had no idea what that looked like at the time. So it was a lot of just trying to find programs and everything. And I went to school for it. But while I was going to school, I also worked in the gaming media, and I used to write articles and do interviews and reviews and things like that. And yeah, and then eventually once I graduated, kept trying and trying, and eventually I got into the industry. So it's been a long road from like when I was probably in 4th grade. And yeah, so I figured out I wanted to get into gaming very early.
So from day one, you knew you wanted it.
M-
That's
my
pretty
my
impressive.
mother loves to joke that I was playing video games in the womb. Like,
Yeah, just a little Game Boy and Tetris, probably. Yeah,
yeah,
right.
it's fine. It's fine.
Clearing some lines. You just reminded me that I've been neglectful of not only my Animal Crossing island, but definitely my Neopets. So they are probably in dire straits
Oh,
these days.
they're dying. They're dead.
Well, that got bleak. No, I'm just kidding. So, rounding out our group here, I'd love to hear, Gabe, your path into games.
Yeah. So going all the way back, my sisters had the NES, and I was like the annoying little like the baby in the family that wanted to like take the NES away from them and play it. Eventually, my parents gave me a Game Boy, so I had my own thing, and then Pokemon Red, which kind of blew up my whole world, got me really obsessed with it. I learned how to record on a VHS to like capture like old Pokemon episodes. So like I eventually became the go-to person in my family. Like, hey, I need to record channel 30 at this time. And I'm like, I got you, and I'm like run over to use the VCR. My abuelo in Puerto Rico eventually gave me a Nintendo 64, and that was sort of a big gift for me, and then became something that was my own console. So really kind of early on, I was obsessed with games and very intentional. I was doing research on like DigiPen even before I was thinking about college, like early on in like elementary school days. I'm like, oh, there's this school called DigiPen, but I grew up in Florida, and that's out in the like the West Coast. And I knew my parents back then were still like kind of cautioning me of like, well, maybe think about something a little bit closer to home. And it's a big risk to go that far out. And then I lucked out because I got really big into Madden, which is a popular sports game, and that game is produced in Florida, in Orlando. And then I kind of worked backwards from there. EA had a partnership with UCF, and UCF had a graduate program specifically about games that was on par with DigiPen. So I already got my like, oh, I forget about DigiPen. There's this school that's like 2 hours away from my hometown. Way more palatable for my parents also. And I was also going to go through a UCF undergrad program first beforehand. So they're like, okay, go get your traditional undergrad and then go try this master's program and really get into games. That actually did feed me into working on Madden at EA for the first couple of years of my career after I graduated from grad school. EA went through a round of layoffs, so I was let go and then rehired in Austin to work at EA Mobile. And then I worked there for a couple of years, enough to the point where they let me transfer back to Orlando. So I came full circle through EA back home. And that entire time as a designer, I kind of felt two things. One, I'm definitely enjoying or more interested in the project management side of versus the creative side. And then the other thing being that my work-life balance was terrible, and I'd already been laid off from this company once. So like, what is my future, and where am I going ultimately? Iron Galaxy was sort of a parallel, had existed for a long time, and I had a lot of my classmates who had already went to Iron Galaxy, and they were saying really positive things about work-life balance. They had a producer role that opened up, and I took that as my first chance to like, let me actually apply and get the title that I think I'm more suited for versus designer, and also let me try to work on my work-life balance. And I was happy to check both those boxes, and been here for 3 years since, and I've loved it. No regrets.
Awesome. We are thriving, I would say. I would definitely say we are thriving. And kind of like I was saying before, right? Like it's never perfect. We can always get better, but I do love here that we do have that emphasis on the people side of things. I think it's really important. But you've all kind of illustrated your journey and how you got into games. Mine was pretty winding too. I was in comic conventions for 10 plus years. I was doing brand management, PR, social media. I started volunteering on indie games, and then that got me part-time work on like just things that were going to get onto Game Pass, right? And then that ended up getting me to Iron Galaxy, but it didn't follow that traditional path. I had to go chase it. So it seems like a lot of us have those common themes that either like you either planned for it and you charted out that path on how to get there and doing the research, or not that you lucked into it, but it's just like something you got to later in life and you had to kind of just be like, oh, hey, this is the right place, the right time. So not everyone's game journey will be the same, but if it starts later or sooner, that's totally fine, and know that that's normal. But if you have the passion for it, we want to give you the tools to chase that too. So I guess let's talk about some of those things that like if we have advice for someone who's interested in working in games, because there's a lot of different feelings out there and a lot of different advice and a lot of people interested in it too. So Keenan, would you mind sharing any advice you have for someone who's interested in maybe following the path that you did?
Sure. I kind of alluded to this in the first question, where I was kind of like doing my research and seeing what experience I could gain. And the specific YouTube video that comes to my mind for this question, there's a one of my favorite games, as mentioned earlier, was League of Legends. There's this,
Yeah.
I think, founding interns video that Riot Games posted, where they have a conversation with one of like the first employees ever or interns there,
Yeah.
and if I'm remembering the story correctly, he was a teacher, decided to quit his job and work at GameStop because he's like, I just love games. I want to work with games. And then he saw a Craigslist ad to go work at Riot, and he gave it a shot. And that part of make a jump and go work at something related to games, to try to get that relevant experience would be my piece of advice. Uh, Go to where games are, have conversations with people there, network to see what options are available, even if it's like maybe out of reach initially. At least you know what's surrounding you locally, and then make educated decisions from there.
Yeah, awesome. Take that like at least half step or kind of closer step to the industry. I love that. Erica, what about you? What kind of advice would you share?
Yeah, so people don't realize there's so many different types of positions in gaming. So even if you're not necessarily the best artist, or maybe you're not the best programmer, there's people who are writers, there's production, there's community management, there's so many different aspects to gaming. So your path, like as you said previously, there's so many things you can do. But one thing, especially for design, because that's what I focus in on, is that you basically you just have to keep designing, keep trying. There are so many free resources in terms of free gaming engines that you can, if you just, and you don't have to have a ship title, especially when you're first starting. And a lot of us, even people I know who've working on games for 3-4 years, they don't have a ship title, but they have tons of experience. So if you're working on something in your own free time, like push that forward. That shows incentive, that shows creativity, that shows a lot of things. And so if you're like not quite sure if you should put this in your portfolio, do it. We will see it, we will look at it, we will love it. Even if it's not necessarily 100% completed, it gives us something tangible to look at.
100%. And I was going to say, some of those free engines, there's Godot, there's Game Maker Studio, RPG Maker. Construct is one that doesn't have too much coding in it too. So like, just wanted to say some of those engine names out loud so people know what they are. They can chase them down and look. And there's tons of resources, just like you mentioned. Of course, you could look at the big AAA studio engines as well, but there's a lot of, like you mentioned, free resources out there too. And then Gabe, I think the next thing that I want to jump into is what advice you'd have, because you've done the design side, you've done the production side. So what kind of advice do you have someone who's interested in games?
Yeah, something that's really stuck with me as advice growing up was take the advantage of the opportunities you have and never sit back expecting something to be given to you. You need to work towards it. And that's been something that I really held deeply for myself is, have that initiative, have that drive, and really attempt to do things. And, whether it's in your comfort zone or out of your comfort zone, the next thing I would say is to try to build something yourself or work with the team to build something. And, whether job shadowing is an opportunity that's available to you, if you had an idea in your head that you wanted to be a designer or be a writer or be an engineer or an artist, is try to find people who have those roles and see if they can talk to you. Maybe they do allow job shadowing so you can see what their job is like, or just try applying that skill set into doing a project yourself. Because I think you can quickly find out what you actually, there's things you think you like, and then once you try to apply them, you find out there's something else that you don't like about it, or actually, while I was trying to set up this project, I got more interested in something else abstractly as part of it. And you're like, oh, maybe instead of being an artist, I was supposed to be a tech artist this whole time, or a project manager. Yeah. So really you need to try those things, and using the tools you mentioned, that there are enough free services or tools available to try almost any field in the industry.
Yeah. And I think tying this in a bow, right? Like as Erica was mentioning, there's so many things. There's the community management side, there's IT, there's people operations, employee success. There's so many things that don't necessarily require that traditional, you know, degree or background and stuff like that. But I also I kind of agree that you can discover what scratches that itch in the exploration and finding out and kind of trying things first before you kind of commit to a path. So that's really great. Um, let's talk specifically about Iron Galaxy and some of the fun we're having here. Of course, we're going to keep project specifics, on the low. We're not going to share too much of that. But Everardo, can you share something that you've recently enjoyed about working at Iron Galaxy, or something you've enjoyed in your career with us in general?
I think overall, what I enjoy about working at Iron Galaxy is sort of the flexibility in nature of like from project to project, being able to try different hats, wear different hats. So I'll give you an example. When I first started with Iron Galaxy, whatever it was, 12 years ago, I came in as a contractor. Eventually, I got hired full time and sort of worked my way up to do an environment lead. The projects move on, years moved on, and the opportunity to do art direction was there, and I was given that opportunity. So I allowed myself to do that. After trying that out, I'm like, maybe it's a little too much for me, and let me go back to environment lead again. So I did that for a number of years, and that comes up to sort of where I'm at right now, where having tried environment lead, art direction, back to environment lead, and now wanting to do a little bit more high level leadership again. Again, going back to like Iron Galaxy just gives the opportunity on a project basis, and if the opportunity is there to like, hey, you want to try something different, let's work together and figure out how best to see eye to eye to like where you want to go with your career and how you could help Iron Galaxy and vice versa, right? So this sort of flexibility and collaborative nature with the company and workers next to each other, and like, hey, we want to keep working with you, let's make this happen for both of us, right? So yeah.
Love that. Yeah, the all the variety, adding new tools to that toolkit. So it's like Batman, but with like 5 or 6 different utility belts, maybe, just because there's so many things. Gabe, what about you? What's something you've enjoyed about working at IG?
Yeah, so something that the founder, Dave Lang, told me early on in orientation was, especially for production, something that will happen here at Iron Galaxy that doesn't happen in many places, that your career growth or your experiences are going to grow rapidly based on the exposure you have to multiple projects and partners at other studios. And something that I've really greatly enjoyed with that is that I've been able to be working with 3 or 4 different project partners or different studios, and they all do things very differently. And there's pros and cons of each. And Dave was like, the best thing you can do for yourself and your growth and for us is to be that sponge, take processes or learn processes that work really well, or find the things that don't really work well, and bring that good stuff back to Iron Galaxy. So when you're working on our own internal projects, or you start working on a new project, you can already start funneling in all these learnings you've had, working with Microsoft or working with Sony and working with Blizzard, just, et cetera, et cetera. There's just so many different opportunities there. And I've learned a lot in my 3 years here compared to my previous time focusing on like one project at EA.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. The variety is truly, I think, a huge boon. Something else I think that has had a huge boon is our diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts. Rejess, you are our DEIA lead, and you've been doing great work for the over 2 years or close to 2 years and all that now. I'd love for you to share some of the programs, some of the things we do to support diverse talent, underrepresented, and marginalized groups here at Iron Galaxy.
Some things. Well, first, we host programs like this. So Press Start was born with the idea of helping underrepresented groups enter the game industry, or just demystify some of the ways to get into the games industry, and just teach people that this is an option. We learned that a lot of underrepresented folks just don't know that games is an option for a career. So we wanted to do that. Some other things that we have employee resource groups. So we have 6 of those. They are thriving and alive. We host all kinds of informational and educational events internally. So we try to educate our employees and just, expose people to different things that they may not be familiar with within their internal communities. But we also do things like work with our recruiting team. We work on our product development stuff. So, we really try to practice what we preach and implement DEIA in all parts of our company.
What were some of the Hispanic Heritage Month events we have? There's like a dance class coming up. Can you tell me about that?
We had cafecito time. We kicked things off with cafecito time first, where we catered breakfast from local Latin businesses and Hispanic businesses to support those in the community. We have a PowerPoint party coming up on Friday, a Hispanic Heritage Month PowerPoint party. We love PowerPoints around here, so we're going to have a good time learning about people's cultures and different backgrounds or whatever it is that people wanted to share from their heritage. We have a Bailar Conmigo, which is in conjunction with one of our happy hours, because we have bi-weekly happy hours at Iron Galaxy, but we also will be doing some merengue classes first with our signature drink. We're going to have a Paloma, I believe. So lots of fun, but lots of learning about other people's cultures and just lots of spreading the good cheer.
I love that. I love that. And I think one of the big things that I love with us is that I see the programs, I see the investment. We don't have our DEIA efforts and diversity efforts. It's just a cute bullet point on our website. We do commit the time, the energy, effort, resources, and people to it. One of those people who has committed some energy, effort, time, and resources to it is Gabe here. Gabe, you're actually the ERG head for our Hispanic group. So would you mind talking a little bit about what it's like to be an ERG head? I know that this is something new to you and something that we're all kind of working on together. We're united, unidos, as it were, right? But please share some information from the inside of working with an ERG.
Yeah, so this is my first time working with an ERG as a lead with a company this size. I work at EA. I was part of the ERG there, and I actually think as soon as I joined an ERG, I've noticed the most amount of career growth in my time. It was through career development training and workshops that were hosted by the ERG that actually helped me figure out that I was a producer versus a designer. And I got a lot of support from the ERG to help me like think more about my career outside of just focusing on the project and the next thing in front of me, like project after project. It was more about thinking about who I was and what I really strive to be. And then the beauty of like being an ERG lead, especially here at Iron Galaxy, is working with Rejess very closely, working with everybody as panelists here. A company of our size of almost 300 people, I actually haven't been on a project with most of the folks in the room, but I have been able to work with them pretty extensively now through Unidos, through coordinating these events. And, I've learned a lot from each of them, and I hope they've learned a little bit from me. And just as a producer also who's trying to, growing into a senior producer and having sort of leadership responsibilities, you learn things like, again, like initiatives, driving initiatives, and sometimes working with ambiguity. Like sometimes you, especially for a new org or a company that's building up ERGs for the first time, there's a lot you need to like build from scratch, like kind of figuring out your identity, what sort of events you can support, and sort of who are the team members you can rely on to get support and volunteer effort for these kind of community efforts. And so just, that helps kind of break you out of the tunnel vision of just focusing on your project and looking inwards and self-reflecting, but also like reaching out and appreciating just the company at large. And I've got to work with so many people with DEIA, ops, all the different departments we have on the call here. And it's been a pleasure. And it's something I wish I had done sooner in my career, but I think ERGs as general concept are still new in the industry. So it's great to see where we are now, and I'm looking forward to the next 10 years.
Yeah, to where we go, where we grow. Of course, I love all of that. Speaking of growing, I don't think you can grow at a company without having someone be a mentor, someone be there for you. But let's talk about our, not just IG careers, maybe our careers in gaming just at large. So, Everardo, do you have a coworker who's left a considerable impression on you in your time as an artist, either here at IG or somewhere else?
Let's stick with IG. I'd like to call out Steve Kasanovich. Earlier this year, he did a presentation at GDC on Iron Galaxy's character pipeline, and really impressed just with him being our character lead, pretty much like signing up like, hey, yeah, I'll do this talk, and basically going into a huge auditorium and speaking about our process, which just that in itself, beyond like him as a co-worker or whatnot. I mean, him stepping up and doing that just blew me away, and it's just like, oh, I'm always going to remember this dude for that.
Amazing. I love to call out give shout outs to our awesome co-workers. What about you, Erica? Who's left an impression on you?
I've had so many people leave such a lasting impression on me. I've had so many amazing mentors. One of my favorites though is a man named Mike Rossi. He's taught me quite a bit on terms and from managing people to technical application to UI design to just so many things. Definitely cannot commend that man enough for all of the things that he's taught me these past couple of years. So he's still, even though he's now not no longer my direct superior, he's still on my speed dial. If I have questions about something, I'm just like, hey. So, but there's so many people at this company that you can all pretty much everybody will listen to you and give you guidance and give you feedback no matter what. So it's a really awesome and friendly place.
It's great to hear that those olive branches are there. Those relationships still work. Your number has not been blocked yet, right? Like it's good to hear. Good to know that. Keenan, what about you? Is there anyone at IG who's left an impression on you recently?
Like Erica, there's too many to count. Even when I just like look around this call, I have amazing conversations with you, Eli, Rejess, Gabe. I feel like you and I have been getting closer because we've been working together. Erica, you and I on the last game jam thing we did together, you were such a leader to me. And then Everardo, I just started learning more about you because we got to work on that Meet Iron Galaxy together. So first shout out to everyone on this call. Very lucky to be working with all of you. If there's an additional person that I'd want to single out among the many of them that I'd love to, probably be my buddy Derek Genrich. We're on the same community team together. We're a smaller team here at IG, but he kind of like took me under his wing a little bit. Is like, hey, you're brand new to the industry. I was like that just a little bit ago. We've kind of had similar backstories of how we found our footing and place in the industry. And he's just always there for me as my teammate. If I have a question, I don't know what to do, I need a little bit of guidance, I can message him. You're like, yeah, give me 30 minutes. Yeah, give me an hour and a half. And like, he's always there for me. And that kind of behavior, I think, is displayed by many people at this company. That a lot of people will be open to helping each other because that's just kind of the culture that's been built here.
Gotcha. What about you, Gabe? Anyone who's left an impression recently or in the long tenure of your game career?
Well, more recently, in the last 3 years, Dan Coleman is, I think, our head of games is his title, and he's sort of my boss's boss's boss. But we end up having a lot of conversations. He does a lot of the coordination with getting our business partnerships and signing agreements so that we have projects and partners in the first place. And usually there's a handoff to the producer to, all right, now that we've signed this deal, here's the person you're going to be working with throughout the remainder of the project. And he sort of remains there as a guide, someone you can bounce back and forth messaging. And I think this is, being at EA, which is a developer and a publisher, I was very working within the org or the company itself. So I had my project and my team, and if I needed to escalate things, I would talk up to my leadership. But here, when you work with a partner, you have to think about the client-customer relationship, and that was an entirely new component for me. And learning on what's the right things to escalate internally versus the right things to escalate to the partner, and what's the right message to give, and how do you offer reassurances or mitigations. And so, being a better producer, being a better communicator. There's a lot that I owe to Dan Coleman just in my short time. So I appreciate it.
Yeah, and like I'm kind of hopeful as we're all describing these relationships that like it's normal to need a mentor to have that person help you and then to learn and be that sponge and grow from all of that. I think it's very very important. But speaking of being the sponge, I want to get into kind of the career growth that some of us have received here. So I want to start with Erica actually. Erica, can you tell me about your growth here at IG?
Yes, so I've had some amazing opportunities here at Iron Galaxy. I actually started my career over 6 years ago working in QA. So I was a tester. I actually was a QA lead in one of our projects for a little bit. But my heart was always in design, and the design teams and department heads were fully aware of it. I was learning things in my own free time and constantly just trying. And I just happened to always be the QA person on the UI team. So we'd always split up our responsibilities. And I just started learning more and more about UI, ended up having a passion for it. And an opportunity came up, and Iron Galaxy was just, hey, do you want to try design? And I was like, heck yes, let's go. So I actually went through a mentorship program where I got to shadow a couple of our technical designers on a project, and basically just showed my aptitude in terms of what I know as well as what I could learn, how quickly, what my instincts were. And by the end of that mentorship, they were just like, yes, you should join the design department. I still remember the day that the head of the design department pulled me aside to a meeting room and was just like, we're going to offer you a full-time design position. And that was amazing, since when I started in QA. I started as a contractor QA, eventually became QA full-time, to then go to design full-time. And then from the design department, like I said previously, I've had amazing mentorships and teachers and guidance. So I was actually got to be the sub-lead on Rumbleverse for a little bit, UI UX sub-lead. And I'm now a lead, and I'm managing newer designers. And I just went from the bottom of the bottom in terms of associate level all the way up. And I still have tons of career opportunities growing. So many things that I can be doing still and learning. So tons of career growth at Iron Galaxy for me.
I look forward to when it's Erica Galaxy. That's what I look forward to when you take over.
Yes.
But it does sound like right, you had to do things on your own time to chase that dream, and you also got that support internally, right? So am I correct in just like saying that, right? That you were doing this in your free time alongside your regular work and chasing that passion, right?
Yes. There was a lot of me just learning more about it, reaching out to people, asking for feedback, showing them, hey, this is what I'm doing. How would you set this up? And getting some awesome constructive feedback from designers as well. So no, there's a little bit of both for all of it. But this is this mentorship program that I'm talking about. I am not the only one coming from QA into other department switches. There's multiple people have done this program, in the past and currently, and not just from QA to other things. We have people that, like Gabe, goes from design into production and all kinds of things.
Yeah.
So Iron Galaxy is really awesome. If you show an interest in something and you want to learn it, even if it's in another department, if an opportunity comes up, they will work with you.
But you got to do the work too. Yeah.
Yes, work with you, alongside you. There's never just like, here you go. No.
yeah, exactly. As we said, Gabe was saying before, that we have to kind of chase it and have that go get it attitude type of thing. What about you, Everardo? What's kind of been your growth trajectory here at the company?
Sort of touched upon it in an earlier question, where I did start as a contractor here. That's, as the company grew, that I was pulled in as a full-time employee, as a regular environment artist. And as we sort of grew our environment team, I was given the opportunity to step in, sort of lead that environment team and be an environment lead. From there, the opportunity arose of doing art direction on a project. So again, as the company has grown, these opportunities have opened up for me in particular, and I'm sure for everyone else in the different disciplines. But yeah, that's sort of, the company's always willing to work with you in regards to wanting to try something else. I mean, right now, I'm at that sort of crossroads again of like, hey, we've got a big environment team. We've been training other environment leads. What would you like to try work on next, Everardo, right? And right now I'm sort of at the crossroads. Do I want to keep working on environments, or do I want to work more on a high level art direction or creative director sort of road or whatnot? So ever growing and never changing. And again, Iron Galaxy is there to, work with you to, help you along the path. So, yeah.
I like the ever growing for Everardo. I love that. I don't know if you need to brand that or get a shirt or something. Keenan, what about you? What kind of growth have you experienced?
There you go, missed the mute button. I mean, first off, I got my start in games here. As mentioned earlier, I worked in like the games sales space previously, but started in game development here. And then past that, I've been able to provide assistance to a bunch of different departments here. Previously on projects, if a producer needs assistance on something, I kind of get to shadow them and see what they do, see what I can provide assistance on. Same thing with design. And then most recently, previously I was only community manager. Now I'm community and social media manager. Um, it's just more and more opportunities seem to be opening up as I extend my interest here, saying, "Hey, I'm interested in learning more about that. Are you open to having a side conversation?" Um, the amount of people that are open to having that conversation and then can give you the instructions or the next person to talk to is amazing here. I'm very thankful for it.
Love that. Love that. Yeah, I've experienced that kind of growth here too, I would say. So that's a kind of a common theme. But I think like a lot of us have said, kind of you have to go after it, you have to chase it. But the variety here just leads to so many opportunities, I think, for our team members too. I did want to talk with you, Gabe, just about, because we've kind of mentioned some hard skills, right? Like maybe engines or, like things you can chase, either the educational paths and all of that. Are there any maybe soft skills or non-technical skills that you kind of use every day that help you be an effective producer?
Yeah, absolutely. I think production is a very soft skill kind of driven field
Yeah.
anyways, and so communication is my general answer here, and writing and presentations are sort of the underneath that bullet, like the sub bullet points of what I mean by communication. My writing, I never went through creative writing in school, but I was a big fanfic writer growing up. I loved writing Dragon Ball Z fanfic. I think I
Yes.
wrote Naruto fanfic for a little bit also. Um, and then that kind of spun into writing as just a general interest of mine. And, cover letter, resume, just communications via emails. And then how you bundle those into like presentations or PowerPoints. It's like, what's your message? What are you trying to convey? Are you asking for help, and are you getting the help that you've requested? Do you need to give feedback, and is that feedback being conveyed respectfully?
Yeah.
Can you give a concept or an idea? Can you sell it? Clarity, brevity, and wit is some of the things I remember about general writing best practices of like try to be brief but be clear, and if you can be a little funny, bonus points. And pulling off all three can be tricky. If you can do at least two of them, that's great. And so I've just kind of fallen back into my writing, especially with working with partners. You have to craft beautiful messages that they can understand, that gets your point across. There's so much outside of just being purely technical that can go a long way. And so soft skills in general, communication, I see, no matter what department or discipline you're in, I definitely, first impressions kind of come across. It all comes through communication.
I love it. I love it. Yeah, those are all things I think that we can all work on, that don't have to have that monetary investment, like maybe on the educational side. Like I think I always tell people, like one of the things that I thought was good is like taking a stand-up class or taking like an improv class, because that yes and mentality kind of prepares you to be ready to react to something, take in that suggestion or that information and say, yes, this is a fact. And then also, instead of having that like X or my arms are crossed, like, no, how is this true? And it just kind of invites you to maybe take a perspective and kind of just say yes, and how can we do this, right? So I always love that kind of principle, and that's one of the soft skills I always talk to people about, that I think it makes your communication, your writing, conversation, all of that kind of a little sharper if you can stomach going into some of those maybe cringy environments and learning all of those tactics and all that. Next thing I want to talk about is imposter syndrome. So Erica, can you share with me any wisdom you have on someone who's struggling with imposter syndrome, because you've had a lot of different growth here, so I'd love to hear how you manage that growth.
Yeah, there's been a lot of times where my leads have been like, hey, we're gonna have you do this, and I've been very much going, I don't know, okay, kind of a situation. So one of the biggest things is that you should if you are struggling with something and you don't know how to do something, that's perfectly normal. Nobody is born perfect. You're going to learn these skills as you go. And especially at Iron Galaxy, like we mentioned mentorship multiple times, there are always people that are willing to help, engineers, different cross disciplines, just in general. If you don't know how to do something, you can learn. And that really helps out. And also, this is also something, imposter syndrome, everybody feels this in some sort of capacity. So you are never alone in that feeling. And again, also, and that's another major thing. And then I think my last bit is that, and I think I mentioned this previously just a second ago, perfection. you're not going to achieve it. There is no perfect game.
Hmm.
If you tell me you have a perfect game, no.
We'll find that bug. Yeah.
I will so point out issues. And we're all human, and failure of anything, you're going to learn from it.
Yeah, any
So.
game being made is a miracle. And so yeah, like the fact that there's also
the fact that we all come to an agreement on like how things are gonna that's astounding when you get multiple designers in a room and we all agree on the same thing. Whoa.
Amazing. Everardo, what about you? Do you have any advice for someone struggling with imposter syndrome?
Yeah. So, much like Erica mentioned, I mean, we all suffer from it in different degrees, right? I particularly suffer it, on every single project that I get assigned to. So, I'm constantly, whether it's the perfectionist in me or imposter syndrome, the things that I tend to do to help me get past it is one, look back at my previous experiences, successes, kind of like sometimes I even go to my portfolio or whatnot and remind myself like, hey, you've done this before. Hey, remember that last game that got shipped? You were part of that team that, was successful in shipping that title. So, for me, when it kicks in, and it's something new, and it's whenever I start a new project or start learning something new, that's when it sort of flares up and kicks in, and I have to pause and sort of remind myself like, hey, look at your previous successes, and it helps me sort of slowly break through that sort of that obstacle, and gets me going into the project.
Yeah, and I'm glad you have those tactics because that kind of stuff never goes away, or it just sometimes gets quieter and sometimes it's louder. And I think it's a normal part of being a creative, or making anything that's going to be looked at by maybe millions or thousands or hundreds of people, right? Like, so that I totally hear you on that front. On my end, yeah, I think that you're totally right. Like, everyone kind of experiences these things, but it's good to have those kind of like look back, give yourself that high five, right? Like, I am dope and good at this, right? Yeah, like that, like go back in time and look at your stuff. I love that. So I think one of the things I want to kind of maybe wrap up on here is talking about role models, because I think that like along the way we all get different help, and we've kind of been talking about it throughout this subject or throughout this whole conversation here. But do you have any role models that encouraged you to get into games, Gabe?
Yeah, I gonna use my dad here as a role model. I think my grandfather who got me the Nintendo 64 was a big push into wanting to get into games, but his son, my dad, was he's been a project manager my whole life, and something that probably should have been a clue for me early on, that maybe I had the kind of the DNA for this
Project gene.
yeah, the project management gene, that it must just be there. And there was at least one time when I knew I couldn't apply for a course credit that I needed to graduate in 4 years with the undergrad, which kind of delayed my whole intentional plan to go into grad program and to go into games. So early on, it was already thinking about, is this it for me? Do I need to go find another career? Think about like a new job, since I was getting to the end of my undergrad time. And my dad was like, don't let a technicality be the reason for you to abandon one dream. Like, he definitely was okay. Like, if you need to spend another year in college, we'll support you, or we're there for you. Like, don't see this as a big mistake that you need to like change your entire life on. So I definitely owed a lot to him for that mentality, and also just modeling his behavior of being someone who communicates clearly. What he wants, what his goals are, and that's just a great project management mindset to adopt. And then here at Iron Galaxy, Tom Carbone, he was also one of my professors at FIA. And so he was someone who saw a lot of promise in me and really wanted me to come to Iron Galaxy. But that was at a time when they didn't actually have a lot of designers. And so he always gave me a very patient, like, maybe now's not the time, but you definitely have a lot of, aptitude. And he was very encouraging of me wherever I went in my industry. But he was constantly reminding me, like, Iron Galaxy is always there. There's a place for you, or there would be a place for you. And it turned out to be true. And kind of his encouragement was one of the big reasons why I applied and reapplied. I didn't get in the first time. So glad I eventually got in.
Well, whoever the hiring manager was back then is a bum. How dare they? No, I'm just kidding. I would have hired you, Gabe. I would have hired you 10 times. Keenan, what about you? I know you've kind of talked about this whole journey already, but just kind of putting a bow on it. Did you have role models or people that you kind of pointed to that you're like, yeah, that's where I want to be. That's where I want to work.
Yeah, so I have some non-traditional ones, and then I'd say a traditional one for how I'd approach this question. The first up, it'd be content creators. Seeing YouTubers and Instagram people like thrive and try to make a business out of themselves, I think gave me the motivation to try for myself when I didn't really necessarily have other people around me that were as interested in games. I'd see my favorite YouTubers and I'm like, all right, you're figuring it out and you're playing the same games I am. So maybe there's a way I can figure it out too. And, I could have tried to explore that route, but I think my curiosities leaned in working in actual game development space. So I'm really glad it worked out in that way. So content creators. And then traditionally, gonna piggyback Gabe, family and friends, pushing you through the hard and rough times, along with being motivation to just try difficult things. My wife had a mid-20s thing that I think probably gave me the confidence to go for it. She worked in, I think, property taxes, a law or something, and she's like, you know what, programming out of nowhere.
Just out of nowhere.
And she went to a developer boot camp, and you hear some of these stories and it's like, they figured it out, they put in the time, they put in the effort. And while you may have landed in that career a few years later, then you may be comparing yourself to, who cares, you found the place that you wanted to work in, right? So started working in game dev at 27. I don't know if that's like new or old or what in the industry, but I'm so happy I landed here.
I love that. Yeah. And yeah, the journey is going to start at different times and different places for everyone. And you just got to keep chasing it, whether it's that like, hey, I'm putting in 2 hours a week or I'm putting in 20 minutes a week, right? Like you just got to keep having that repetition, I think, going after it and making that plan. So I want to now jump to some of our career advice before we get to your questions. So I'm going to share my screen once again. So give me a moment as I get this rolling here. Can everyone still hear me? Is this screen being shared?
You're good.
Yes.
I'm good. Thank you. Good to hear. So, some of our general advice, and I think this is maybe one of the biggest things for me as a recruiter, is I really want you to apply on the official company website. Many of the job boards that might be popular, they aggregate information, sometimes against the company's will, and they might not have all of the same fields that we have on our website or on another company's website. So, oftentimes, when you're seeing those aggregated job posts, you could be missing a key detail. So, I always encourage people, even if you see a job post on another job board on the internet, to do your best to find the original post on the official company website, because that job might not even be posted anymore on their company website, and you might be applying for something on a third-party website that is already closed, and you never hear back, and then maybe you get that sour taste in your mouth, and maybe it never even got to them as an application. So please be mindful of applying on the official company website, not through third-party aggregation boards. I also think being specific about what you apply for is really great too. Oftentimes, there'll be someone who was the lead producer, maybe like Gabe, right, or like a producer on their project for their capstone class, and then they start applying to those lead roles, and that's like 5 to 7 to maybe even 10 years away from you starting that first role in the games industry. So there are times where people will just apply to every open role that we have as a company. I think that's a bad tactic. You should look at roles that are maybe fit your experience level where you think you're at. If you don't know what experience level that you're maybe at, you can reach out to the recruiters. But if something's maybe 2 steps away from where you're at in your career, there's always going to be those situations where like, hey, I'm an associate or junior person and I'm on the bubble. I'm on the cusp of becoming mid-level, I feel, right? So maybe, hey, that's that like half step, like, oh, maybe I am there and I can apply for those. But if you're just starting in the industry, I don't think it makes sense for you to apply for those senior lead roles or just whatever a company has. And I also think that it's good for you to kind of be more direct with what you're looking for, right? Gabe, you started as a designer and then you became a producer, right? But some people have in their educational experience or in their hobbyist time or what they're doing, they are a producer, they are an engineer, they are a designer, and they're in these different lanes. When you apply to us with a resume that has all of those things on there, or you apply to all those different roles at our company, we're not always sure what you want. So a cover letter is a great place for you to describe your intentions. And a lot like Erica said, this is what I want to do. I want to be a designer. So with us, if you apply to like an art role and a design role and a production role, you're likely not going to get advanced for any of those roles because we want you to be specific with what you're applying for, so we know what you're passionate about. Next up, I wanted to talk a little bit about, give me a second here, a good interview question. So I think it's great for everyone to ask for feedback at the end of interviews. Sometimes when you apply somewhere and you never hear back, that company could legally be prevented from providing you that feedback. That recruiting team could be advised by their company that we don't provide in-depth interview feedback. So just know sometimes when you get ghosted, it's for legal reasons, and that's why they don't reply or respond with that feedback. I think it's good for you to ask at the end of an interview, hey, do you have any feedback for me on this interview? That's totally an okay thing to ask during the end of any interview. But also, I think this is a really good interview question that came from one of our designers that Erica mentioned before. And he got very excited after an interview and said, someone asked me my favorite interview question, and it was this. And I like sharing it with people because I think two very good things can happen from this question here. Do you have any concerns about me in this role? Now, you can put this into your own words, but essentially from this question, you're either going to find out what the thing is that you're missing and work on that for next time, or you're going to find out, oh, hey, actually, I have an anecdote or something that was in my experience that smooths over that concern that you have about my candidacy for this role. So I think, do you have any concerns about me in this role is a great question to ask your interview team. And I encourage you to screenshot or get this information from us or write this question down, because I think it's a great one for any interview in any entire industry. Next up, I wanted to just briefly cover cover letters and portfolios. Cover letters to me are a brief narrative why you are a fit for the role. Your resume is on one side, your job description's on the other, and that cover letter is the connective tissue between the two. You can easily take a bullet point from the job description and you can pair it with an experience you have on your resume, fusion haul those two things together like Keenan's last name, and you can have this amazing paragraph about why the thing they want you to do for this job is something that your experience speaks to and has. So the last thing is, if you should write a cover letter, you always should, yes. Polls show that 26% of resume reviewers read the full cover letter. So that's not a lot, but 67% of those same folks responded that the extra effort in the cover letter is what drove them to review the person. So just be aware of that. I think the cover letter can set that intention and help you really tell the interview team why you're a fit for this role and why you're going to kick butt at this job, right? I think that that's a really good way to do it. And then, of course, with your portfolios, this is more applicable, I would say, to your designers and your artists. When it comes to portfolios for engineers, we want to see your GitHub. We want to see the code, your repository, wherever you have that. And with producers, as Gabe was talking about on the presentation side, it's kind of hard to have a portfolio for your communication, right? But I do think if you create a Canva or PowerPoint around some of the things, initiatives you've led, the teams you've managed, that's a really good way to show an interview team how you might be integrated into their production team, and what things you might be able to present, and how you structure your thoughts and reasonings, right? I think that that's good. But for designers and artists, it's good to have that back end, your paper prototypes, reference materials, talking about your team size, right? That's really important to know. But also, if you show us or link us to this project on your portfolio, knowing the time constraints, like seeing a game and then being like, oh, I made this in 2 weeks versus 2 months versus 2 years, we're going to be able to gauge, what that I guess like hurdle you need to cross of quality or something like that, right? Also, when it comes to portfolio pieces, specifically for artists, you're going to be asked to do tests in many places. And I think it's really good to focus on the task at hand. I've seen the folks that have gotten through our test be the people who focus on what has been asked of them, and they don't give too many bells and whistles. If we have some kind of like totem or idol that you need to make, right, and you spend all this time making this amazing environment, putting all this foliage, and you're not really working on the actual thing that we asked you to do in the test because you want to show off these bells and whistles, you're missing maybe the point or what you should be investing in. So I always say just like listen to the rules of the test, devote all the time that they give you for that test into exactly what they've asked you for. Doing those bonus stages or those extra bits often can hurt you when it comes to art tests. And then last thing is just we don't want appetizers. What I mean by that is we want you to put your best work up at the top of the page. Don't hide it behind a bunch of clicks and assume that I'm going to get to that page you want me to get to. Or with a reel, you know, like a movie, building to a climactic finish, be like, wow, look at this amazing piece at the end of this 2-minute video. You can't guarantee everyone's going to get to the end of that 2-minute video. So please put that information up front. Trailers these days do that annoying thing where it's like the trailer before the trailer because they want to grab you with a bunch of images. That's kind of what I want from reels and from portfolios. I want you to put your best stuff up top at the top of the page or link to the project you want me to see. And then when it comes to reels, I want to see your best work up front. You can't guarantee that everyone's going to watch 2.5 minutes, minute and a half in, that they're going to get to the end where you might have some kind of climactic, you know, finish to the reel that you have there. So please lead with your best work. And I think that that's very valuable. And now it's time for the Q&A. So Rejess, I know that you had maybe some of the questions and Rick might have been gathering some of the questions in chat, but I'd love to kick that off if you wouldn't mind telling us a little bit about the questions, Rejess.
Our next question is, are there any resources available reviewing applications portfolios for early careers? I would love to get some feedback from someone internally.
So at the end of this call, we will actually post a screenshot that has not only a QR code if you want to apply to work at Iron Galaxy, but also our contact information. And we have this resource kit that has all of our like application advice, but it has salary advice, job advice. It has all different types of things that you can basically do to get a little bit ahead in your career. So yeah, happy to help you out and share those resources with you and share our email so that you can message us about that.
Awesome. The next question is, what does it look like to get into QA work?
Ooh, Erica, I think that you should jump on that one if you don't mind.
Oh my goodness, I just happened to kind of stumble into QA a little bit. QA testing, there's a bit of difference in teams of QA testing and then QA and analysts, and it also depends on the company and the team that you're working for. You play the same game a lot over and over and over and over and over again, and you do the same thing every single day. So one of the things is if you already enjoy playing games and if you really like trying to break things, that's a really good way of starting it in a QA, just kind of figuring out what usually breaks things. There's certain things that you look for when you're working in QA, like when they first give you a build, you just immediately just start running into walls and you just run around and look for areas where there's no collision and stuff. So QA testing is definitely an extremely important and valuable part of game development. And I don't really have a guidance in terms of like how to get into it necessarily. I mean, apply. QA is probably one of the easiest parts of game development to get into, since that's just the skill that people just learn as you go. There's not really any courses on how to do that. So,
Erica, what are some of the common technologies that you might use as a QA person? Do you remember any of them, like what you were using?
So I worked a lot with production actually, because we do a lot of like writing up bugs. So learning about programs like Jira was really important for tracking. I also did a lot of documentation because you would have to create test plans. So you would work with designers and developers when a new feature was coming. So understanding how to use your basic Word and PowerPoint and all that stuff. In terms of programs, really honestly, there wasn't really anything in particular that I had to know ahead of time. Mobile development, it all depends on what the game platform is on. There really aren't tons of actual programs or anything for it. Primarily, if you're making a game and you are testing and playing it as you're building it, you're going to be quality assurancing your own stuff as well. So not really any resources off the top of my head besides play games, play lots of games, play them a lot. I will tell you that QA are typically some of the best gamers in the company. Whenever we would have company play tests, QA is just always the ones that were just destroying everybody. I very much am usually the representative for the UI design team because of my QA roots. So the better you are at games, the better you are at QA. Because you can do some crazy stuff. Helps out a lot.
I love the takeaway, Erica, being today. They're like, yeah, I went to the press start thing with Iron Galaxy, and they told me to play games. Like, you know what I mean? Like that being the take. I love it. I think it's a great takeaway. Rejess, what was our next question?
So we got two that are somewhat similar. So I'll read one, but it's basically for recent graduates. As a master's student or just a recent graduate in general, with no industry work experience, what do you recommend is the first thing to be done in order to get into games? Or yeah, how do you get in the industry if you're a student with no experience?
I think a few different people here might be able to answer this because some of the people in this call have done that. I think my first piece of advice was do some research on the different departments, you know, production, design, art, engineering, IT, QA, you know, HR, comms, operations, like all these different departments, and figure out if there's one that's close to what you're already doing or close to your interest area. And then from there, once you know which kind of path it is, then you'll be able to better chart how you get to there, right? So if you had said, I want to be a designer someday, then I would say, hey, there's Udemy courses where you can self-teach yourself any of the big AAA game engines, right? But then I could say, hey, there's certifications you can get in our tools and technologies like Jira and Confluence and Perforce and other things, right? So there are going to be like cementable actual like steps you can take, like, hey, I got a certification in a tool or technology that this company already uses, right? And then there's going to be the chasing it yourself, the self-teaching, or finding a school that teaches that thing that you want to do, or an accelerated course that does specifically that thing, right? So there are some avenues there. Does anyone else have anything to contribute on this front, like those first steps or how to go from zero to hero?
I could go next. On the art side of things, I mean, you know, to your point, Eli, it's also like the arts umbrella is huge. You got environment, characters, UI, VFX, animation. So again, sort of funneling down or narrowing down what exactly part of the environment side or art side you want to work on. And then to add to that, I mean, YouTube, I mean, everything, there's a lots free resources online of like tutorials, whether if you want to do environment modeling or character modeling. I mean, there's a lot of basic stuff you could pick up online. You have free software with you know, Unreal or Unity. I mean, you could download these are tools that we use in the, you know, in our industry. I mean, it's free to you guys. There's Blender, which is a free 3D software that you could get in there and start practicing modeling, whether it's characters or environments. There's a lot of stuff that's available to the public that we use internally that, you know, could prepare you and, you know, start you off on a good foot.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think also when if you're going from zero, right, and you're not sure which part you want to do or what you might have the most skill in, it also might be good to look where the jobs are too, right? Like which departments maybe have the most jobs or which sub-disciplines that you were kind of mentioning might be are hiring more than others. So that might be a good thing to talk to the recruiters at that company or even just take a look at like what type of opportunities are out there. And it might be good to, if you're like, oh, hey, I could do this art thing, this art thing, or this art thing. Well, if generally game dev is hiring more of X versus Y, it might be good to build up the skills first in the thing that has more opportunities for you. So I think that that's a realistic thing to you know, either talk to the recruiters or do a check with yourself to be like, hey, you know, is it more likely that I can get into this versus that? That's a good thing to do too.
Awesome. For someone with an accounting background, are there other employment opportunities I should look at in general if a game company doesn't have any accounting finance roles?
Yeah, and getting into finance, I would say we've hired finance roles before. We've had them posted in the past, but I would look maybe and put some Google alerts up for those companies that maybe do the most finances, right? Some of the companies that have those games that are juggernauts, maybe the seasonal stuff, the titles that just like have this rolling economy to them, because there might be more roles for you there. But also on the accounting side, you're probably pretty good with numbers and analytics and things like that possibly. So there's people science, there's data analytics teams as well that sometimes fall under the HR umbrellas, and you might be able to pivot your accounting and finance stuff to that. Or, you know, I'd imagine someone who has a command of accounting and Excel sheets would not find it hard to, over a course of a few years, get into production in some way, shape, or form. So, Gabe, yeah, I don't know if you have any thoughts there, but do you live in the Excel sheets quite a lot? Yes,
Oh
he's
yeah.
nodding. Yes.
Oh yeah, I got like 3 Excel sheets open right now, so definitely useful.
Cool. Yeah, so that might be production, might be a path to maybe chase down. Cool.
Game economy balancing also is a big one for working in them, especially in mobile. But more games as services are doing this. But there's a lot of analytics, and if you are just good with crunching numbers and using Excel to build out formulas and map out like player progression, there's a lot of like balancing and game economics, which is like the internal game mechanics and like progression and leveling up and purchasing items from a store, etc. Like that all feeds in from that background.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And I can see
called sorry, Eli. I
MTX,
think it's called
go for it.
MTX. Yeah.
Yeah,
If you're looking for that buzzword.
monetization. Yeah, exactly. And then maybe like user research might not be too far of a step from accounting skills as well in some senses under the design discipline. Erica, would you say that that's like not close to, but like at least like a component of that cake?
Yeah, data analytics for sure. There, in terms of in UX design, we do surveys and things like that. We gather data and numbers for to compare things to see what's working, what doesn't work. There's a lot of different aspects that could probably go hand in hand a little bit with that as well.
Yeah, user research too. Yeah, that are kind of so there's maybe some options that we just
Also,
said out
I'd
loud.
say maybe HR in like benefits or payroll might be a good spot for someone with an accounting or finance background. While we're talking to Gabe, though, and producers, how beneficial are PMI certifications for working as a producer?
They are I don't have any PMI certifications myself, so full disclosure, you definitely can get by without them. But I have seen a big boost from if you can do Scrum certification or PMP, project manager. I forget the full acronym there is, but if you learn Scrum or Agile tools, project management software, those are all things that can kind of go a long way for game production. Yeah, project manager professional. Thanks.
Thank you. I got another question here. So about personal projects. So we all talked a lot about working on personal projects to help accelerate your career and for your portfolios and resumes. But it says I felt weird listing myself as an art director for my game, but I am overseeing a small team. So how should we present personal projects on our resumes?
What I said earlier about the team size and the time constraints, I think is very helpful. And you can give the context of what type of project it is, right? Hobbyist project or, personal project. When you put those lines in that context, I think that does help us know. I'm the art director for a personal project of 4 team members. That team consists of people I went to college with. Like that context that you give, I think that's helpful. Because correct, if you're art directing for a 4-person team, we wouldn't want you to apply for an art director role because it's a very senior role. Do you have any thoughts on this one, Everardo?
Do agree with a lot that you said. Yes, knowing how big the team size is, but also to your point of like, yeah, it is sort of kind of like if it is a 4-man team versus some of the projects that we worked on are 50-man team, if not bigger, some smaller, right? They vary. But having said that, I mean, even for like some of the art directors that have that resumes that come through our desk, they sometimes show kind of like the breakdown of their vision, right? Kind of like whether it's mood boards or whether it's showing kind of like a progression of like, even though you didn't do the work of like concept to final in-game stuff, sort of kind of like just showing the thought process of like, hey, this is where the idea started and this is where it ended up with, just showing the progression, the visual progression of like, this is how I started and this is where it ended it.
Nice.
And I got a couple other art questions too.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I saw the other one in the Q&A here that I wanted to also mention to Everardo. And the question, Everardo, was, are there any opportunities in the game industry for artists using traditional media as opposed to digital tools? And you mentioned Steven Kasanovich before, and I think he started as a traditional illustrator, then did our concept art intern, and then became the character lead way down the road. But do you have any thoughts on how people who use traditional media can be a part of the games industry?
Well, my background is traditional media. I used to be oil painting and illustration and do sculpting now. As far as, I mean, the question sounded like, is there any way to do traditional media in gaming right now? it could be a piggyback. I mean, you could use that as your foundation, but right now you do the closest to like traditional media is probably ZBrush sculpting, which certain companies have specific roles for that, where that's all you do is just do ZBrush sculpting, and then a different character artist sort of does the low poly modeling and gets it in game, right? I don't know if it's changed. Again, there's certain companies that are set up that way. Iron Galaxies internally, we do more generalist artists, where we prefer the artist to have kind of like that variation of talents, not only ZBrush sculpting, but also getting technical and getting things into game. I can't say off the top of my head if there's like, hey, if I'm a painter or a sculptor, can I do that in video games? I don't want to say it doesn't exist, but I have not been seen that in game yet. Again, it's usually using that foundation and figuring how to get into, if you're a painter, for example, you could easily do UI 2D arts within Photoshop or within some 2D program under the UI umbrella. Another example is we have an animator who's done 2D animation, but he's used sort of that foundation to get into 3D animation and did a lot of the Rumbleverse, character animations or whatnot. At again, that's 2D artists going into, getting that into sort of the 3D pipeline.
Gotcha. And so I know we're at time now. So Rejess, do you want to throw a few at us, and I can do the lightning round here while I put up the screen with our contact information?
Yeah, I got one animation question, so I'm going to jump in on that, and then I'll give you a lightning round. But as someone who works in animation, what skills do character designers or visual development artists need to be concept artists in video games?
I could try to answer that. I'm not an animator. I'm more kind of like, again, on the environment side. But Rejess, sorry, can you repeat that one more time so I can know exactly what they're asking?
Oh. That I deleted it already. Okay. Okay, as someone who works in animation, what skills do character designers or visual development artists need to be concept artists in video games?
To be concept artists. So you're an animator and you want to come into concept arts? Is that what I'm understanding?
That's what it sounds like.
Okay. I mean, concept art for here, I'll speak to Iron Galaxy. I mean, every company, handles concept art differently. But even within the concept art, you've got environment concept and then character concepts as well. As far as like character concepts, obviously knowledge of, anatomy, right? Proportions, and on top of, obviously fashion or whatnot. But I think at its core, concept art requires, at least the fundamentals of knowing your anatomy. On the environment side of things, obviously, this is more buildings or forests or whatnot. I think this delves a little bit more to composition, also color theory as well. And I think that goes on both character and environment, knowing definitely some strong color theory. That's sort of very high level, but
broad, yeah. I love it. No, I think it's good to give that broad kind of description. Rejess, are there any more questions that we could do some lightning round stuff with, or
the main thing is just like, the main thing is just like the number one thing you look for other than a degree.
Yeah. And with us, I think another version of this is like what's the ideal candidate. And I think for us, outside of, having some familiarity with tools, technologies, or the things that we're asking for in the job description, we specifically are looking for those like egoless team players who can take feedback, right? And how do you illustrate that on a resume? That's really hard, right? So I think your cover letter can speak to that, the language you use. I'd say that we're kind of a we, not me kind of organization. It's a team. It's a huge team sport. Making games is this huge effort by everyone here. So the ways that you can highlight the way that you can be a, good person to work with, right? I think that those are really important things. And when I say good person to work with, I don't mean smiling, energetic, extroverted, wiggling like me. I just mean ultimately like keep an eye or a mind on how to be, a good, team member, right? And that could be, letting people know when things are going to be late, over communicate, right? Like it could be the things that you can just simply do to be a good team player and to be a member of the team, taking that feedback honestly and really being reflective on all that. I think that those are kind of key things. And, I think a lot of our hiring managers would say just like, we just don't want to work with people who are jerks because, those reputations follow people and the gaming community is small. And ultimately, right, just like being willing to take that feedback. And yeah, amazing games get made by people with lots of strong opinions on a lot of different aspects of game development. But ultimately, just do everything you can to be a good team player. And I think you'll go far in your career. And especially with us, it's very valuable. And then here's our contact info. Here's the QR code. You can scan that with your phone if you want to apply. And that was our last one, Rejess, the last question.
Yeah, I think that covers it.
All right,
If
cool.
you didn't get your question answered, email us or hit us up on LinkedIn.
Yeah, awesome. Well, then what I will do is I will thank everyone so much. Thank you, Gabe. Thank you, Rejess. Thank you, Keenan. Thank you, Erica. Thank you, Everardo. Shout out to Rick for running the tech here. Thank you all for stopping by today and learning a little bit about Iron Galaxy and hopefully getting a little nugget or a piece of information to help you get further in your game career. We're available to you. We have resource kits if you want to email us. We can definitely take care of you and help you out there and help you in your game dev journey. But thank you so much for coming and attending Press Start. Have a great day.